I was surprised. Adam Silver shares first thoughts on shocking Luka Doncic-Anthony Davis trade. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver addressed the Luka Doncic-Anthony Davis trade during a press conference at NBA All-Star Weekend. The trade, one of the biggest in league history, marked the first time two All-Stars were dealt in the middle of a season. Typically, All-Stars are traded during the off-season. The Doncic-Davis trade was a move no one saw coming. Neither the LA Lakers nor the Dallas Mavericks had publicly expressed any intention of trading their star players, which is why, when the deal happened, the basketball world, including Silver, was stunned. The trade sent shockwaves across the basketball world. Mavericks fans were irate, even staging protests to demand the firing of general manager Nico Harrison. As for Lakers fans, while they were disappointed to see their star big man leave, they welcomed Doncic to Los Angeles with open arms.
Life since I've been a baby. This is the worst moment in the history of my life. This is ridiculous. This is crazy, man. We went to the NBA Finals. Why are we trading the best player, the franchise player? How are we trading the franchise player? You went to the NBA Finals. He's supposed to have a statue.
Let's see Adam Silver break silence on Luka and AD trade, and Hornets has not filed a protest over Williams' trade.
Vinny?
Hey, I'm Vince Goodwill, Yahoo Sports.
Hey, Vince.
Good to see you. In contrast to the Luka Doncic trade, there was the Jimmy Butler long drawn.
I thought that was the trade before it went here in Golden
You thought
State,
that was the
yeah.
trade? Okay. Secondary trade. It was long, drawn out, suspensions, mudslinging on both sides. All of these trades seem to have the constant theme of longer money, second aprons. Are you concerned that the new CBA is going to create more contentious player franchise standoffs like we've had?
No, I'm not concerned that that will be the result of the new CBA. I actually think that what the CBA was designed to do, honestly, is to force teams to make difficult decisions. I think teams are still finding their way a bit through this new second apron and what it means. But for us, look, it's no secret that part of the design of that CBA and pushing down high-end spending was to create more parity in the league and to do a better job distributing our best players around the 30 teams. And I think you're seeing that to a certain extent already. I'll note, I think new CBAs are always difficult to predict. I think it was only a few months ago when the conventional wisdom around the league seemed to be that we sort of spoiled the excitement around the trade deadline, that the day and age of these great trades, right, the deadline weren't going to happen anymore. I think that we then just saw more players moved before the trade deadline than any time in the history of the league. So I think there's two sides to every trade, and for the best aspect of trades is that it potentially creates a sense of renewal in some markets, sense of excitement in others. There, of course, is a downside from a player standpoint. Putting aside a contentious situation, park that for a second. I know, because I talk directly to players, as do you, it's incredibly disruptive in a player's life to get traded. And many players are of the age where they have young children, and kids potentially get dislocated, mid-year from school. I think it's part of the grand bargain of playing in the NBA in return for guaranteed contracts and strong, union representation, and a lot of money, honestly. So it's all in the back and forth sort of that is part of playing in professional sports. Certainly that's not unique to the NBA. So I don't think it's bad. We're always looking at our CBAs. It's like I talked about before with the game. Will there be opportunities to improve it? Presumably, yes. And I feel like as through successive collective bargaining agreements, we've always found ways to tweak things and make things a little better in certain cases. But I look now, most importantly, at the level of parity we have in the league. Of course, 6 different champions over the last 6 years. But just look at the season so far, where you have Oklahoma City and Cleveland with top records going into All-Star. That's without anybody. The great news is I don't hear many people saying, and by the way, they're smaller markets. That the goal is that no longer becomes part of the discussion, that you have a 30-team league and teams are judged based on quality of management, desirability for players, luck will play into that, as it always does, but that's what we're trying to create here at the league office.
Standing on the right, Tim.
Now that we've now that Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry have won their arbitration case earlier this week, do you expect the Board of Governors to ratify them as the new owners of the Wolves?
My expectation is that will move forward, but first, Glenn Taylor does have a decision to make as to whether to appeal that arbitration decision. I mean, that's Glenn's decision to make. I haven't talked to him directly about that. I think, though, that A-Rod, certainly Mark Lowry, are well known to the league at this point. They've already been vetted and approved as minority owners. I think they understood that the league had no role in this arbitration. That was something they had agreed to as part of their purchase agreement. And I think now that the arbitration has been resolved, I think they will, as I said, Glenn Taylor has a decision to make. If he chooses to appeal it, obviously we will wait till there's finality as that process, and if he doesn't, we will move forward right away and continuing the remaining part of our vetting process, and then it would go to the governors for a vote.
If he doesn't appeal, though, would you expect them to be ratified after this vote?
The only reason I'm not going to answer that is that I don't want to turn the Board of Governors' role into a rubber stamp. I mean, that is a decision they need to make. We should conclude the vetting process. I know Mark and Alex understand that. That's a process that every governor in this league has gone through. I will say, standing here today, I don't see any reason why it won't be approved. But again, we need to follow the process.
On the right front row, Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Nichols. Fox
Hi,
Sports.
Rachel.
A bunch of your All-Stars today were asked if they had your job as NBA commissioner, what they would do. And given any topic in the entire league being open to them, the topic that most of the guys hit on was officiating. And Steph Curry, Anthony Edwards, Damian Lillard, Cade Cunningham, a handful of other guys talked about different aspects of that. Steph Curry was talking about transparency. I know you guys already did the last 2-minute report, but he would like to see the official grades and the way that system works for each official. Damian Lillard Ant Edwards was talking about text and how he'd like the standard for that to change. And they had different aspects to it, but I guess what I wanted to know from you is, how much do you want or need to be responsive when some of your top players are talking about this kind of thing? And again, given any topic out there, this is what they kept talking about today.
I remember David Stern used to say, when he was asked about officiating when he was commissioner, he said 100 years from now, whatever changes, that somebody's going to be standing here and they're going to ask them about officiating and be unhappy with it. So that issue obviously isn't going to go away. I just will say that we welcome direct feedback from all players in the league, whether they're top players or not. And I think it is an ongoing discussion. And we're always looking to improve officiating. NBA players are members of our competition committee, so we talk directly about it there. And we have our own conversations with Andre Iguodala and the Players Association about how we potentially can improve officiating. A couple other points. One is, I'm very hopeful that there will be some technological solves when it comes to officiating. I think we've talked about this before. People are familiar with Hawkeye technology owned by Sony. It's used in tennis. We've been working with them for the last few years about creating the objective ability for example, out of bounds calls. As I said before, there's 100 fingers on the floor at any point, different body parts, so it's not as technically straightforward or easy as I might have thought it would have been as a non-technologist. But they're working hard on that, foot on the line, etc. Goaltending, other calls like that, anything that we can be objectively decided. I think to the extent that we can do that, and we'll get that done in the next couple of years, it will then allow the officials to be more focused on the truly subjective calls, block charge, etc. Is there a foul? The sufficiency of the contact. So we're working on that. What's hard is, on some of these calls, you said Anthony Edwards mentioned technicals. It's very hard to have bright lines on some of those things. There's a little bit of it when you see it. I know that's not always satisfying to our players, but we work directly with them. We look at a lot of tape with them. We're players and teams on occasion will come into league office and say, we want to talk about the way a particular player is being officiated, and maybe there's something that the officials are missing. And just lastly, to your point about transparency, I think that's one that the officials also have their own union. Everyone in this room is familiar with human resources issues, and that nobody necessarily wants to have their employment record published. And I think we just have to find the right balance there.
My only follow-up to you is, no one ever asked you, if you were a player for the day, what would you do?
I would stop complaining about officiating.
We're going to move to the left side, second row, Ann.
But thank you for asking me.
Ann Killian with the San Francisco Chronicle. A lot of people tuning in tonight were probably hoping that they would see a sequel to what a lot of people considered the highlight of last year's All-Star game, the Sabrina and Steph shootout. Can you shed a little more light on why, after a lot of anticipation and ideas being floated of what was going to happen, the league could not make that come about? And also, what's your level of disappointment that something that groundbreaking and that cool wasn't able to be recreated?
The issue there, and it goes precisely to the last point in your question, and I did speak directly to Steph and Sabrina about it. Last year was so magical, that competition, that it started to feel forced. And I think there was concern from all of us that we just weren't feeling it, that we were at the point where it felt like we were, even though I had been public, I had said that I was very hopeful or said it was going to happen again, and I think so had they, that it just got to the point where, I don't know how to say it other than we just weren't collectively feeling it. That that it was such a unique moment last year. I think it wasn't that people were anticipating it was, and they both shot the lights out in that moment. It just seemed like coming back here, as exciting as it might have been, that this just wasn't the right time to do it. And there's no more to it than that. I mean, they're both friends, they're wonderful people. I'm sure there's a part of them that recognizes they may be disappointing people, but I think they all felt, and they felt, and I agreed with them, that if it just didn't feel right in the moment. And so we looked at different permutations and ways to do it. And as I said, and I'll be the first one to say at the end, it just felt forced. It lost that special feeling that it had last year.
We're going to go right here in the front row. Right, Mark?
Adam, Dan Wakey with the Los Angeles Times. A third question about the trade. This one, Charlotte and the Lakers had a trade for Mark Williams that was rescinded. Has Charlotte filed any formal protests in regards to this trade? And then I guess moving forwards in a world where sports science and predictive medicine takes on a bigger role in organizations, what options are there when something like this occurs?
The answer to your first question is no. Charlotte has not filed a protest of any kind. I think the larger issue, reflecting your question in the day and age of sports science, is there a different standard of sort we should be applying in terms of players, passing physicals in trades? And it's something we should look at as a league. I will say this issue does not come up that often. I can't even remember, and certainly I don't think in my tenure there's ever been a challenge because a player has failed a physical, but almost by definition, you get into a certain level of subjectivity, in where that standard is. But I think, let's see what Charlotte decides to do here, but I think either way, it's gotten our attention. We understand that in the back and forth of teams and trades that to the extent we can reduce uncertainty, that's a positive thing. And obviously, I mentioned before that for players who are involved in.
If you've made it this far and are enjoying the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications. We know watching this video takes some of your time, and we appreciate you.